Okay, so we're diving into some serious Masonic knowledge today, huh? This Bridge to Light book you've brought, a study in Masonic ritual and philosophy. It's like secret societies and ancient wisdom, and I don't know, it's a bit Dan Brown-esque, but like with a philosophical twist.
Yeah, Freemasonry definitely has that air of mystery surrounding it, that's for sure. But what this book really gets at with Scottish Rite philosophy is how it uses like all this powerful symbolism and allegory, not to hide things, but to reveal hidden truths, to show a path towards like moral and intellectual enlightenment.
So less Da Vinci Code, more about like actual self-improvement. Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. Where do we even begin unpacking something like this?
Well, this book really digs into the structure of the Scottish Rite degrees. You start with those early degrees, the ELU of 9 and 15, and it builds all the way to that, the big one, the 32nd degree, Master's Royal Secret. And each degree kind of reveals another layer, a deeper philosophical insight.
It's like leveling up in a video game, but for like wisdom and stuff. So what kind of wisdom are we talking about here?
Well, let's take, for example, the 14th degree, the perfect ELU. The text describes this whole thing, right? A chamber within a chamber. You have to go through this passage with 9 arches. And it's all symbolic, right? It symbolizes the pursuit of the true word. But, and this is important, it's not a literal word. It's this lost concept that when you discover it, leads to enlightenment, to understanding.
Okay, yeah, that's some pretty cool imagery, I gotta admit. But what does this true word actually stand for then?
That's the beauty of these Masonic symbols, right? It's open to interpretation. It lets you find your meaning in it. But the book, it really emphasizes these themes of truth, liberty, moral conduct. Those are central to these Masonic teachings.
So it's not about being handed the answer. It's about the journey of seeking it out, of finding your own truth within like those guidelines.
Exactly. It's self-discovery, guided by those principles.
I can see how that would resonate with people, even today. Speaking of journeys, the book also mentions something about Knights of the East and West. Okay, now that sounds pretty intense. What's the significance of that degree?
Yeah, the Knight of the East and West is a big one. This is where the candidate really faces these like trials of faith. They're confronting this whole paradox of good and evil, right? Especially in a universe that's supposed to be created by a benevolent God.
Okay, so we're getting into some deep philosophical waters here. What really jumped out at me was how they brought in John the Baptist and the Essenes. Like suddenly we're bridging this gap between like ancient traditions and modern Freemasonry.
It's really interesting how the Scottish Rite brings together these symbols from different cultures, different times. This degree, for example, it uses the symbolism of John the Baptist, and the Essene purification rituals to highlight these ideas of spiritual cleansing, renewal.
Wait, Essenes, as in like Dead Sea Scrolls Essenes. Hold on, this just got real. Are you saying there's a connection between ancient Jewish mysticism and modern Freemasonry?
It's not a direct link, but the parallels are, they make you think. This Knight of the East and West degree, it focuses on purification by water and fire. And those elements, right, water and fire, they pop up in tons of ancient traditions. The Essenes, too. It even looks at events from the Book of Revelation, but through a Masonic lens. Like it's suggesting this link between spiritual change and the search for hidden knowledge.
Okay, you had me at purification by fire. So these rituals, we're talking more than just like secret passwords and handshakes here, right? It's about facing some heavy stuff, some big existential questions.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this book and Scottish Rite philosophy in general so fascinating. They're using symbolism, allegory, to tackle these timeless questions, about morality, spirituality, the human condition. It's heady stuff.
It's amazing how these like ancient rituals can still speak to us today, like they're tapping into something, I don't know, universal about being human.
Absolutely. And the way these teachings are passed down is fascinating too. Like this book, A Bridge to Light, it points out how Freemasonry uses elements from other traditions. It creates this unique kind of symbolism, Did you notice how it talks about Cabalistic numerology in some of the degrees?
Kabbalah. Okay, see now that's something I've always found really intriguing, but honestly, my knowledge is pretty surface level. What's the crash course version?
So Kabbalah is this form of Jewish mysticism, right? It tries to understand the hidden meanings in Scripture. And it uses numerology as a way to, explore the divine.
Okay, so it's like a secret code, but inside an already secret society.
It's not so much about keeping things secret as revealing layers of meaning. Each one gives you new insights if you're looking for deeper understanding.
Man, this is like making my brain do backflips in a good way. But it shows you how much thought goes into these traditions, We've gone from secret societies to like ancient wisdom, secret codes, and now Kabbalah. It's obvious Freemasonry is way more than just a social club. There's real philosophical depth here.
Exactly. And the book digs into some deep themes. Good and evil, the search for truth, even immortality. It uses those ancient rituals to explore the big questions, the ones we've all asked.
It's interesting, though, how much it emphasizes personal interpretation, right? It's not about following rules blindly, but about going on your own exploration.
Right. It encourages you to think for yourself, to discover. Freemasonry doesn't give you dogmatic answers. It gives you a framework, a space to explore, contemplate, always guided by those core values.
It's like Freemasonry is its own kind of school, but instead of classrooms, you've got rituals. Instead of lectures, it's symbolism.
I like that. It is about experiencing the teachings. Each degree builds, using those symbolic trials, those revelations, to help you understand.
So it's active, not passive. You're not just sitting there, you're engaging with it, taking it in, making it part of your life.
Exactly, and the symbolism is key to that. A Bridge to Light really goes into detail on the symbols of each degree, and it shows how even little details, stuff you might overlook, can have huge meaning.
Speaking of, there was this mention of white gloves in some of the rituals. What's the deal with that? Seems like a small thing, but I'm guessing in Freemasonry there's no such thing as a small thing.
You get everything's symbolic.
Yeah.
White, usually that represents purity, innocence, right? A clean heart, a clean mind. So those gloves, they symbolize the Mason's commitment to living a life of virtue, to approaching these mysteries with, like, pure intentions.
So it's not just about putting on the gloves, it's about embodying what they represent, that inner commitment to living by those values.
Exactly. This symbol is a reminder constantly of what you're striving for. It's about aligning your actions with your ideals.
It's kind of wild how much meaning something as simple as gloves can hold. It shows you the power of symbols, how they affect how we think, how we feel, even how we behave.
It's about turning understanding into action. It's not enough to just get it mentally. You have to live it. Remember that phrase from the book, to work is to worship.
There's that action again. This isn't some passive philosophy, is it? It's about taking what you learn and making the world better.
And that work, it's not just your job or your personal life. Freemasonry takes a broader view. Contributing to society, making it better as a whole, that's a form of worship too. Bringing those principles of truth, justice, brotherly love out into the world.
Being an active participant in making things more just, more equitable, using those Masonic principles as your guide.
Precisely. Being a force for good, not just inside the lodge, but out in the world.
Speaking of the lodge, how do you move through these degrees? We talked about the journey, but is it like school? Do you have to pass tests?
It's not that formal, no. The book talks about mentorship. More experienced Masons guide the newer members. They explain the symbolism, make sure the teachings are truly understood.
So you're proving your commitment, showing you really get it, more than just filling in the right bubbles on a test.
Exactly. Embodying the values, not just memorizing them.
Sounds like a really unique system, this blend of old wisdom and modern relevance. Speaking of old, there's a lot about history in this book. King Solomon's Temple, the Knights Templar. What role does all that play?
That's where the allegory comes in. The rituals use those stories, not as literal history, but to teach moral, philosophical lessons.
So you're not taking them at face value, but looking for the deeper meaning behind them.
Right. Take King Solomon's Temple. It pops up all over in Masonic symbolism. But it represents building something moral, intellectual, building your character.
It's amazing how they weave those stories together. Historical stuff, mythology, biblical tales, all to create this, like, tapestry of allegory. And you get to find your own way through it.
And it's never really over. That's the beauty of it. Like A Bridge to Light says, there's always more to learn, more layers to peel back, more you can find in those rituals and teachings.
This book is just layer upon layer, isn't it? Every time you think you've gotten a handle on it, there's something else to discover underneath.
That's what makes it so engaging, though, right? It's a journey, and not one that ever really ends.
One thing that stuck out to me going back to the book was this theme of balance. It pops up everywhere.
It really does. It's like a constant thread through all the degrees.
Yeah, like finding that balance between what you want as an individual and what's good for everyone, you know, or the balance between, like, the material world and the spiritual side of things. It's like Freemasonry is always pushing you to find that equilibrium.
It's about recognizing that interconnectedness.
Right.
How those seemingly opposite forces actually work together. And A Bridge to Light, it makes this point that it's not just about personal growth, but about how Freemasonry itself evolves.
That's interesting. How does that balance play out on a larger scale?
Well, think about it. You have this organization that's steeped in tradition, ancient rituals, all of that. But it's still around, still relevant today. The book suggests that's because it's always striving for that balance, holding on to tradition while making room for progress.
Not stuck in the past, but building on it, adapting those old teachings to fit the modern world.
Exactly. And you see it reflected in the rituals themselves. They're using ancient symbols, old stories, but they're interpreted in a way that still speaks to us now, finding the timeless wisdom in those traditions.
Taking the best of what came before and using it to build a better future.
Exactly. For individuals and for society as a whole. And A Bridge to Light really drives that home. The idea that Freemasonry offers this framework for understanding, and it goes beyond time or place. It's a reminder that no matter how different we seem on the surface, there are universal truths that connect us all.
We all experience joy, sadness, love, loss. It's those shared experiences that make us human.
Precisely. And Freemasonry, the way this book portrays it, it offers a space to explore those shared experiences, to support each other, to work together for the greater good.
It's like a microcosm,
Yeah.
a tiny model of that ideal society we're all striving for, built on those principles of like mutual respect, brotherly love, working together for something bigger than ourselves.
And it's important to remember that sense of community, it doesn't end at the lodge doors. The book emphasizes how important it is for Masons to be active in their communities.
Yeah.
Taking those values, those principles, and putting them into action out in the world.
Not just talking the talk, but walking the walk.
Exactly. Being a force for good in your own life and in the world around you.
It's a powerful message. It really makes you wonder, are there echoes of these Masonic principles all around us? Maybe even shaping our culture in ways we don't realize.
That's a question worth considering. Maybe that bridge to light isn't just about, uncovering Masonic secrets, but about recognizing those universal truths inside each of us.
Tapping into our own potential and finding ways to, express those ideals in our own lives.
Beautifully put. In the end, the book reminds us that becoming enlightened isn't about reaching some finish line. It's an ongoing process, and it's open to anyone who wants to embrace those values. Truth, justice, brotherly love.
It's been an incredible deep dive, that's for sure. We've covered a lot of ground, from ancient rituals and secret codes to some pretty heavy philosophy. If you could leave our listeners with just one takeaway from A Bridge to Light, what would it be?
I think the most important thing to remember is that Freemasonry is, at its core, about building bridges. Bridges between individuals and their communities, between holding on to tradition and embracing progress, between the things of this world and something more. It's about seeing that shared humanity and working together to create a world that reflects those values.
And maybe, just maybe, it's about building those bridges within ourselves, too. Becoming the best versions of who we can be.
Beautifully said. That's the real bridge to light, and it's one we build step by step, both within ourselves and in the world. It's a journey worth taking.